Welcome, everybody, to Aeon Byte. And from that clip from Carrie, if you're wondering, yes, that is the greatest American hero as the dude. And yes, Sissy Spacek is one of the greatest actresses of our time. Very underrated, but so it is. But yes, welcome to Aeon Byte. And as the song goes, your point of view was never sane. It never was. And that's why you are here. And that's what you've come to realize. So we are losing our mind and coming to our senses here on this show. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis. And all I have to say is the word for world is forest. Let me repeat that. The word for world is forest. And we will unpack this, but I think if you tell yourself that all day, you're going to reach the goals of this specific topic. And with us today for this and so much, it is truly an honor to have Lisa Maroski to discuss her book, Embracing Paradox, Evolving Language. Lisa, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Miguel, for having me.
Were you ever a Carrie fan or like horror movies? Brian De Palma?
uh, I can't say I'm a horror fan. Science fiction, yes. Horror, no.
Yes, yes, indeed. And in fact, your book does deal with it. That quote, the word for world is forest, is from a mutual heroine of ours, Ursula Le Guin, who I think is also one of the
Yeah.
greatest writers of our time, certainly philosopher. Most people don't know that she and Philip K. Dick went to the same high school. I don't think they knew of each other. My wife thinks that obviously it was an MK Ultra high school. If two giants, one of the two greatest sci-fi writers in all of history, were just kind of in the same high school. But anyway, that's for you guys to speculate upon. And with us too, we got Mr. Grampong. Graham, how are you doing today?
Doing very good. Looking forward to wrestling with some paradoxes. This one's right up my alley. Tag.
Good, 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 good. We look forward to your input. As always, I see people in the chat. Good to see you. Hey, Christina, good to see you. You were at Astronosis. We had some good conversations and other people too. As always, if you have any questions for Lisa, please super chat them so we can separate them. Or if you have any complaints against me, super chat them and I'll take it in the chin. No worries about that. My point of view is not sane either, that's for sure. And other than that, I don't have much housekeeping. I hope everybody here in the United States is gearing up for a good holiday weekend. Recharge your batteries because I have a feeling this autumn is going to be out of control. I went yesterday to the Starbucks with my daughter. My other daughter had ballet, and I couldn't believe they're already having like pumpkin spice latte. It was 97 degrees here in August, but that point of view is not sane either. So, well, Lisa, let's start with you. Tell us about your book. In fact, I want to start. I hope you don't mind. I'm just so excited because I think your work is essential for the survival of humanity, for our next stage in wherever we're going. I don't want to call it evolution because again, I'm trying to get out of this linear thinking. But you talk about how you became interested in language was through asking questions, and then I was thinking of that movie Oppenheimer. I don't know if you've watched it, but in the movie, Oppenheimer is, while he's in Germany, he's going to see Niels Bohr at his talks. He's always there, always there. And then he meets him face to face. And Niels Bohr goes, "Oh, I recognize you. You're the person who's always asking me the same question. Why do you do that?" And Oppenheimer goes, "Because I'm expecting a different answer." And I thought that would be Lisa, right? That would be you asking the question, knowing that the answer doesn't have to be linear, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My question about questions was, how is it possible to know enough about what you don't know in order to ask a question about it?
Yeah.
And then, like, how do you know, since you're asking about something you don't know, when somebody answers it, how do you know when they've answered it adequately? Like, is there like some epistemic itch that gets scratched and like, oh, okay, that was a good answer. The itch is gone.
Yeah, you could be pulling my leg right now and I wouldn't know, right?
Yeah. So questions were, my entree into studies about language. Wittgenstein. I really loved Socrates and Plato. And so I came at question asking, from a very Platonic point of view, which is that, you're pulling out of you something that maybe you already know, you just don't know you know it.
Yeah,
But I also wanted to study questions from a more psychological point of view, because some people ask a lot of questions, some people don't. Why is it that some classrooms, you just get this flowering of people asking questions, and other times, like everybody's sitting there, I'm not going to raise my hand. So those sorts of things sparked the initial interest, and then I just kept wondering, to go back to quantum physics. You mentioned Oppenheimer. How is it that light can be both wave-like and particle-like? How is it that, or why is it that people argue about nature and nurture? I mean, to me, it was pretty obvious we're both. Like,
yeah.
Why do people argue about it? like one side's got to win. And so that's when I started looking into opposites and polarities, eventually into paradoxes.
And then that's how, so you decided to write this book based on all of this, and also sort of show which way, how we can move forward again, as you said. I think you realize, like many, that we've basically hit a wall. Quantum physics, the state of this world, the state of history, has shown us that the linear thinking maybe doesn't work. And then I was thinking of your book, and I was like, well, that makes sense, because you look at some of the giants, in the real giants, like Tolkien and Jung, Carroll, and even Aleister Crowley. What they were doing is they were trying to create a new language, and being very loud, public, that they were trying to create a language, because they knew we needed to change our consciousness. And I know it's chicken egg language consciousness, but that's what they're trying to do. And that's, I think, what you're trying to do, is say, look, we have hit a wall, and this sort of logic, linear language isn't helping us really break through, right?
Yeah. In where I want to go, which kind of goes beyond what other people have wanted to do, is not just invent new words. There have been a lot of people over the years who have invented new words. Jung invented a bunch. Jean Gebser invented a bunch. Now, David Bohm saw that it wasn't just about inventing new words, it was about expressing process differently. English is a really noun-heavy language. And so when we invent new words, we tend to invent a bunch of new nouns, which doesn't help us get beyond that sort of structural, materialistic linearity. And so what I am saying needs to happen is not just neologisms. We need to rethink the structure of language itself. And that involves rethinking a whole bunch of other things that are also bound up with it. including, within the structure of language. It's not just, syntax and semantics and logic. It also gets into categories. What categories are defined by your culture? And then once you get into culture, you get into consciousness. And those are really difficult things to change all at once. And I think we do need to change them all at once, because the way language is structured now has kind of gotten us into the destructive mindset that we just keep replaying.
Amen for sure. That's why I'm using that quote, the word for world is forest, because again, in that one, it's interesting because the natives, they don't understand this idea of separateness, and they're being conquered, and sadly suddenly they realize, well, without the forest the world would disappear, and they have to like separate themselves to violently attack the Terrans. But still, again, it's a beautiful thing about being embedded. And even today, I agree with you that we are, the word for world is Lisa. The word for world is Graham. I was telling my cats, the word for world is cat. It was a meditation to break that subject object and get myself embedded. And this idea has to change. I know you mentioned like Richard Tarnas in your book, and I know Gordon White has said it. Even something as radical as uh, let's say nature, using terms like the environment and ecosystem and all, we're still using colonizing terms, and we're still screwing ourselves by doing that. We have to change that. And the idea, again, in that logical mind is that, well, if I pay more taxes for the environment, or I eat less meat, or there's less cow farts, we're still in that adding, you know what I mean? We're linear logic way. And even there, once we transform it and realize that we are not separate to Gaia, but we are, I think that's right there is where the solutions are, don't you think?
You just hit the nail on the head. It's recognizing simultaneously that we are distinct but not separate. So I am distinct from you, but we're not separate. And that can be a tricky thing to come to, because we've been taught that everything is separate. And we've been taught that things that are separate have to compete for scarce resources, and that just perpetuates, runaway economies that continue to destroy ecology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I know it's nuanced, and I know, like we were talking before, to find a new language, we have to talk in this old language, but there is a way in. I was watching one of your YouTube videos, excuse me, and you made so much sense, because you were talking about how, and I can relate, how individuals will have a mystical experience, or let's say I've done ayahuasca, or I am part of these groups when we try to share, and you have or you go out to the sunset and you feel the numinous and you're so happy. As soon as you try to express it, it goes away, and it almost feels like a huge letdown, right? Like, how do I explain oneness when language, there is no real word for it? Oneness, you know what I mean?
So that's a really good entree into this text, this Gnostic text that we're going to talk about.
Sure. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah. So do you mind if we just read, for those viewers who are not immediately familiar with the Thunder Perfect Mind?
Mm-hmm.
Can I read a few passages?
Yes, for sure. I guess we should start by saying, I'm sure most of the audience knows, but Thunder Perfect Mind is in part of the Nag Hammadi library. It doesn't exist anywhere. It is a sort of, art erotology, but it's probably the most unique poem ever written. You don't find that type of poem in ancient times and any times, from a what the goddess or the female figure is doing. She's both suffering and victorious. You do find it in other places in the Nag Hammadi library, like Eve talks very much in like the origin of the world like that. In fact, it's word for word. That's why scholars think it is Sethian and exegesis of the soul, but it's probably Egyptian, originally Greek, then Coptic. I think it was written by a woman, but because it was performative, I don't guy in a dress, and I don't know. And the only thing too I wanted to let you know is John Dee and Edward Kelly, when they were doing their scrying with the Aztec mirror and all that under the court of Elizabeth, they summoned an angel who was called the Daughter of Fortitude. And this angel, almost word for word, chanted Thunder Perfect. And obviously they would not have no access to the Nag Hammadi library. So that's the only time in history that it appears. But anything I'm missing, Lisa?
Is that the text that Jung quotes? That from the Rosarium?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he was.
No? Okay.
No, I don't think he was familiar or interested in that.
Because there is a text from Jung's The Psychology of the Transference that is similar to the Thunder Perfect Mind, but I would say it's kind of a little watered down.
Does she suffer? That's the whole point. Right? Isis never suffers in her speeches, or Athena or Artemis, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Anyhow, we can come back to this. So let me just read a little bit of it. So we've got some text to actually like play around with and look at and think about. For those people who have not read this before. And this is the George McRae translation. There have been other translations, and we can talk about some of the other translations because there are some differences that I think are important in an important way.
Sure.
This was the original one and probably the best known. I was sent forth from the power, and I have come to those who reflect upon me, and I have been found among those who seek after me. Look upon me, you who reflect upon me, and you hearers, hear me. You who are waiting for me, take me to yourselves, and do not banish me from your sight, and do not make your voice hate me, nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me anywhere or any time. Be on your guard. Do not be ignorant of me. For I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am the members of my mother. I am the barren one, and many are her sons. I am she whose wedding is great, and I have not taken a husband. I am the midwife, and she who does not bear. I am the solace of my labor pains. I am the bride and the bridegroom, and it is my husband who begot me. I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband, and he is my offspring. I am the slave who prepared me. I am the ruler of my offspring. But he is the one who begot me before the time on a birthday. And he is my offspring in due time, and my power is from him. I am the staff of his power in his youth, and he is the rod of my old age. And whatever he wills happens to me. I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. I am the voice whose sound is manifold, and the word whose appearance is multiple. I am the utterance of my name. So I think that's a good start. It goes on for several more pages, but we can get a lot done with just that passage.
Yeah. Tell us about it. I guess what the paradoxes, or how do you want to enter this?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm not a scholar of Gnosticism. I came to it in high school from my English teacher, who told me to read Elaine Pagel's book, The Gnostic Gospels, that had just come out. And I did, and it blew my mind. So when I got to college and there was an entire course on Gnosticism, I was like, I'm there.
Cool.
And yeah, and so that text kind of, I didn't quite get it in college. It dogged me for many, many years. And I just kept going back to it. Like, what is going on here? And it wasn't until I read the Swiss social theorist Jean Gebser that the light bulbs started going off. So we're going to bring in some Gebser to understand this text, and then this text helped me understand Gebser as well. So it was a nice little Möbius type.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
how did Gebser clarify, or the text clarify Gebser? And let me know when you want to pull up some visuals whenever you want.
Sure. So how to start? Let's start with let's just start with the polarities at the beginning. So the things like I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one, the holy one and the whore. So those are pretty standard binaries that one has to be able to hold both. Jung talks about it in terms of integrating the shadow. So, if you think you're one thing, you're not complete until you know that you're the opposite as well. And that's like the first step towards becoming wise, is being able to hold the opposites and know that you're both. Everybody's both. And therefore it really isn't like fair to project or judge people as, oh, you're that, I'm not. Yeah, because in different circumstances you would be that. So that's step one, is being able to hold the polarities. Then step two is this weird assertion of kinship relations, right? Like I am the wife and the virgin, the mother and the daughter, members of my mother. Okay, so members there probably means parts of. So when you think of dismemberment, it's, the parts are being fragmented. So this is members being, like not just part. Okay, so when you're a member of something, like when you're a member of a group, you're not just a non-essential thing. Right. Membership involves, a kind of essentiality to the whole. So to that extent, if we're talking about like not just your, we're not talking here about like your real mother. We're talking about the great mother, the earth, the mother archetype. So to then get that you are a member of the great mother, Gaia, puts you in a really different relationship than, like somebody who's just a separate being, having a life experience on the surface of the third rock from the sun. That's
Exactly.
yeah. So now the other thing that these kinship, oops, sorry, I'm bumping my table here. The other thing that these kinship relationships give us is a way of looking through time. So we're starting to see that the speaker of this text is seeing her and his fullness. Just a little aside, the McRae translation translates everything as either feminine or neutral. But another group led by Hal Tausig at Union Theological Seminary, as a translation exercise, they went and translated Thunder Perfect Mind and found instances where it was definitely a he that was being referenced. And so when you think of the speaker of Thunder Perfect Mind as being like a being who is recognizing their allness, it would be kind of weirdly one-sided to only be speaking from a feminine point of view. So kind of like there's a little bit of yin in the yang and a little bit of yang in the yin. Exactly. There's also some masculine references to the speaker's masculinity within this general poem that is mostly spoken from the feminine. So that adds some balance to the erotology in a way that.
If you don't mind me interrupting for a second, I think it's important because this was done in ancient times, even in like the secret book of John, when Jesus appears to the apostle John, he's like, I am the all, it does the same thing. I am the mother. Jesus changes his gender, and then people, Orthodox Christians are like, how could he? But as Scott, I think it was Hall that noticed this too in the book. If you go, one of the letters of Paul, I think it's Colossians, he says, Jesus is the Sophia of God. In other words, even Paul is switching the gender because, like you said, this is an allness. This is, you encompass everything, even though you have certain expressions and certain timelines, right?
Yeah. And Sophia is wisdom too. So if he's speaking symbolically, gender doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and in Paul's time, it was, I think he knew Sophia was an actual hypostasis, you know what I mean? It wasn't, he wasn't being poet. In those days, if you were saying Sophia, she was a Shekinah, she was an actual consciousness, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So let me back up and just say, and you can correct me too, because you I think know quite a lot more about like the actual Gnostic religion. But if I'm remembering correctly, women were very much a part of the let's call it the priesthood, the leadership. They weren't banished, like as lesser status beings. And so when one is maybe leading a liturgy or a ceremony or a ritual of some sort, and has had an experience of gnosis, how does one, as we were saying earlier, how do you talk about it? So using ordinary language, and I think this poem is a really wonderful way of using ordinary language in very non-ordinary ways to get across that experience of gnosis. Kind of like, you know, when you're a kid, you read a book and you have to write a book report. Well, you know, as a Gnostic, you give a gnosis report.
And that's, yeah, that is hard. Yeah, you have to go for the paradox or apophatic language, you know, which the Hindus and the Gnostic, well, he's not this, God is not, you know what I mean? You work your way back until there's nothing. But you're right. The paradoxes, the different forces together, the polarities. Yeah, that's what the Gnostics would do. It's, or obviously, poetic metaphor, really flowery poetic metaphor. Isn't that another way too, Lisa?
Yeah.
Poetry also breaks our linear thinking and our logic systems.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we do see it in other poets as well. You know, you can see it in Rumi, you can see it in William Blake, um, Auguries of Innocence. Anyhow, so to get back to our bizarre kinship relation, because this is where Gebser comes in. Okay, this was the aha with Gebser. Gebser has this notion of transparency or diaphaneity, and that to get wholeness, you have to be able to see through something. So did I send you the picture of the cubes?
The cubes, I don't know. Let's see. I can go quickly, and then we can go. Let's see. Let me go back.
Oh, maybe I didn't. No. Okay. Well, that's okay. Keep that up for a second. So this is Gebser's structures of consciousness, starting with archaic, which is undifferentiated, which then differentiates into mythic consciousness, archaic, magical, then mythic, where you start telling stories, mental, where you start requiring explanations, and then integral, which is the integration of all of these. They don't go away. They emerge, you know, the way a flower starts with a couple of different petals and then branches into, you know, more stems and branches and flowers and seeds and fruits and all of that. All of these different structures of consciousness, he says, are ever present, even though we do develop through them in a linear sort of way. Then we have to be able to integrate them all. And part of our mental hegemonic culture these days wants to deny the essentiality of, you know, like the magic and the mythic. So in a way, this poem is taking us through some of these reintegrations of the things that have been broken apart. So it's getting us into integral consciousness. And one of the characteristics of integral consciousness is the ability to perceive wholeness by perceiving its transparency or its diaphaneity. So if you think of an opaque cube, if you're looking at an opaque cube, you just see like 3, maybe 4 faces of the cube. But if you can see in your mind's eye transparently through the cube, you see its whole structure. You see its wholeness. And that's a metaphor for what Gebser is saying we have to be able to develop, not just spatially, but also temporally. And I think that this poem gives us a really interesting way to see that temporal transparency. So when you say things like, I am the bride and the bridegroom, okay, we get the duality there. And it is my husband who begot me. So now we've gone through like different generations. My husband, the bridegroom, was my father. I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband. So now we're getting into, the cousin relationships. And my husband is my offspring. So what the speaker is doing now is basically saying, I'm not just all of it in this current space-time continuum. I am all of it throughout all time. Okay? I am speaking as all of it, and as all of it, I'm you, and I'm your husband, and I'm your father, and I'm your grandmother, and I'm your aunt, and I'm your second cousin twice removed, and and I'm all of it. And it allows you to see the all of it through time as well as all the kinship relations. And so that's a really interesting way to use ordinary language to get you to this non-ordinary state of consciousness.
That's gnosis right there. Simple.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're supposed to rise into a fuller level of reality where you are also in a state of self-knowledge where you are all these polarities coming together. You're no longer fragmented or so forth. So yeah, you hit it on the head. Bravo. I would agree.
Yeah. So that Gebser's term is atemporality. So it's not lack of time, it's time freedom. His use of the prefix a or a perspectivity, atemporality, isn't a negation. It comes from alpha privativum, which means freedom from. So when you're all of it, you've got freedom from time. You're not bound by it in the same way. And so a being who is all of it is not bound by time in the same way that limited separate beings are.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's it. That's the goal. Like you, that's why I think Thunder is the most fascinating figure or divine feminine in all of religious history, literature. She's just, and again, so unique. I like Norian, the Gnostic Gospel, but that's another one. But yeah, Thunder is just amazing. I have told people, and I need to expand it when we have our little private groups, take out Thunder and read it, but also start saying that about yourself. I am this person. I was that person. Bring all your polarities together. There's no shame in them. Yeah, okay, you did bad things. Maybe you were traumatized as a child. We all got trauma. Just bring them all together and bring them into the future. But with you, Lisa, you can take it, or with Gebser, you can take it even further, where you can just take on all of humanity and every creature and bird, and that's the ultimate heal. That's how we heal the world, right? That's how we stop harming this planet.
Right. Yeah. You bring up an interesting practice, which I do think Thunder was meant to be performed. It was meant to be spoken aloud as a way to, like one of, I was talking with a guy who teaches Shaivism, and he said that one of the rituals is you do these external type of rituals in order to internalize them. And so by speaking this poem aloud, by externalizing them, you are then internalizing it at the same time by actually. So it's like the difference between saying, I am woman, hear me roar, and I believe that all women should have the ability to be able to roar between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. It's like, it's not it's not a statement of faith. It's not a creed.
No.
It's like, it's an embodiment of who you are.
Yeah, well said. I always tell people, yeah, go out with thunder, but do it out during a storm. Well, stay in your porch. Don't go out and feel with the lightning bolts. Because the rain is the great equalizer, right? The rain falls on you, the bad guy, the cat, the raccoon. You know what I mean? You're suddenly
Yeah.
all equal under this storm, and this storm is true power. So anyway, if you want an exterior force to internalize, read thunder out in a storm. Safe.
Well, let's talk about the title, Thunder
Mhm.
Perfect Mind, in terms of storms. I don't know if they knew back then what we know now about positive charges and negative charges, coming together and creating the lightning and the thunder, but it definitely fits with the coming together of opposites creates, keyword, creates something that you can hear and something that you can see. You can hear the thunder, you can see the lightning. So let's go into, do you want to pull up the slide with the lightning path?
Yeah. Remember Stevie Nicks, thunder only happens when it's raining? I don't know if
Yeah.
she's right about that, but great song. What was the slide again? I apologize.
The one with the Kabbalah, the
Oh yeah.
the tree of life.
Yeah, here's the Kabbalah. Let's pull it up.
Yeah, so it struck me, and back when this poem was written, which we don't know the exact date. I've read from 350 BCE to 350
Yeah,
CE. Who knows?
we don't know.
But around that time there was a lot going on. There were the mystery schools, there were a bunch of Christian sects, there were a bunch of there were the Essenes. I mean, there was a lot going on, and it hadn't been codified yet into, well, this is Jewish Kabbalah and this is Christian and this is it was kind of probably very much a melting pot.
Especially in Egypt, Alexandria,
Yeah. And so the passage, the last bit that I read, I am the silence that is incomprehensible. So that corresponds to Kether, at the top of the tree of life. And then the lightning path comes down to Bina and Hokmah, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. So silence comes down into thoughts and ideas. I am the voice whose sound is manifold. So that brings us into Gebura and Chesed. So thoughts and ideas actually start manifesting through the possibility, which is in sound and voice, and the word whose appearance is multiple. So now we're into Chod and Netzach, which gives us our polarities, gives us images. But it's still an abstraction, and then it finally becomes real in the utterance. I am the utterance of my name, and that's, you know, the grounding in Malkuth, in, you know, this three-dimensional world. And I have never seen anybody, any of the people that I've read, who have talked about Thunder Perfect Mind, point that out.
Yeah, it was so brilliant. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And again, that just tells us something. They're coming from the same font or the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and of course the Kabbalah, Jewish. Some said Jewish Gnosticism. The Sephiroth is all about also the polarities and the movements and everything else. So it's it gets complicated with the shadow Kabbalah, the different levels of reality. Yeah, like it'll get you out of that non-linear thinking, Lisa, very fast.
Right.
Yeah, this is really great. And I mean, I think when talking about this, well, anything else do you want to mention on Thunder?
Not specifically. Does Graham have anything? We haven't heard from
I was just
Graham
gonna,
yet.
before Graham,
Yeah.
he's been the silence. He hasn't even gotten out of Malkuth. I mean, out of Keter. What do you think,
Yeah,
Graham? Question or remark or a couple of questions? Give us what you have, man. Your
no,
thunder.
absolutely. No, I was going to say it reminds me very much of another mystic who wrote, "I am he as you are he as you are me as we and we are all together."
Cuckoo, huh?
Yeah.
Exactly. I am the walrus. Yep. And another one that struck me very much is how much it reminds me of the original Emerald tablet, not the channeled tablets, but the one that Isaac Newton and everybody worked on. A lot of that whole contradictory sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you think? Do you agree we need a new language? Are you happy with linear language, Graham?
I think we need to expand it. One aspect that we need to recognize is, again, I've climbed a lot of a different face up the same mountain as, and what my guides were much more of C.S. Peirce, Maimonides, Nishida Kataro, much more of a philosophy, math side kind of thing. And one of the things that I've realized is we need to use semiotics, but our language, so much we're referring to our own personal experiences. It's tough to put the words, the experience of blue into language and have somebody read it and extract the experience of blue. One of the insights along those lines is the way that words can basically be embody recipes, where you can encompass the experience of chocolate cake by writing down the recipe and then letting somebody else recreate the experience for themselves. And it's some of that, that sense experience, that subjective experience. We can talk about it and we can communicate with people who've also had a similar one. But it's very, very difficult to communicate the actual, sensation or experience itself. And I think we need to acknowledge that limitation on language as well. Peg.
Yeah. What do you think, Lisa?
Do you guys see this poem as doing that, as being that kind of attempt to help others have a similar experience of gnosis?
I would say definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very much along the lines of like Zen koans, a lot of stuff, where it
Yeah.
leads you right up to the limitations of what language is capable of and lets you make the leap beyond that.
Yeah, that was my next question, Lisa. Yeah, koans. That's what we're dealing with thunder and other than the Gnostic texts, or the Gospel of Thomas. If you make the inner and the outer and the female, all these strange
Right.
sayings to us, but they are koans and they have the same purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, to get you out of the linear into what I like to call, the Kleinian loop, after the Klein bottle, which is a paradoxical surface where inner and outer are basically one and the same, although it looks like you can distinguish. This is what I was talking about earlier. They look separate, but they're not.
I have it right
There
here.
you go. There's a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object that requires four dimensions in order to exist and not cut through itself. I mean, right now it kind of looks like it cuts through itself, but in four dimensions it wouldn't. And it embodies the dynamism of flowing from inside to outside. So Steve Rosen, a phenomenological topologist, likes to say that it's a self-referential sign, or a it's self-signifying. So it's not like cat signifies, the little, I don't have a cat, but let's just say I do. The little creature sitting on the rug. The Klein bottle is self-referential. It signifies itself.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think the other one you use, let me pull it up here, is the Möbius strip, right?
Yeah. So that one's a little easier to understand, because you don't have to have four dimensions. So I'll just do a little demonstration here, because that image looks a little simple, but here's how you get a Möbius strip. So you have just a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Right.
Okay. If you join the ends together like that, you've got something with an inside and an outside. And you've got something that has an edge up here and an edge down here. And you have to jump from one to get to the other. So you've got two edges and two sides. But if you give one of these a 180-degree twist, okay, now you get something that requires three dimensions because of the twist. And if you took a pen and followed and drew down the middle, you would draw on both sides without ever raising your pen. Or if you put a pen along the edge and followed the edge, you would get through the entire thing without ever lifting your pen off. So it's a structure that looks like it has two sides on a local level. Like if you were an ant crawling on it, locally it would look just the same as if you were an ant crawling on this. But if you jump out and can see the entire structure, you can see that it's one-sided, but one-sided that seems to be two-sided. And so you get this paradox of, well, it's one-sided and two-sided. But that's because you're shifting perspectives. it's not one-sided and two-sided from a single perspective. You've got to be able to hold both perspectives. And so two of these glued together, one with a left twist and one with a right twist, gives you the Klein bottle.
Exactly. And this helps. Let's see, I had something else. Where was it? And of course, we get also the Ouroboros too. That's a great symbol too, huh?
Yeah, that one is more common in Western cultures than like the yin yang symbol, which was more common in China, Japan. I personally don't think it's quite as rich a symbol as the Taiji yin yang symbol, but it's it conveys the same type of paradox of the snake consuming itself in order to be itself, in order to continue. It's like dying in order to live, eating itself in order to continue existing. The alpha and the omega. I mean, it's very rich with symbolism.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to your.
So this just sort of brings together the different levels of integrating all of these different aspects. So in the center, you have your 3 dimensions: psychic, physical, energetic, psychic. And then at each level of complexity, so starting with the individual, going up to the group, going up to the culture, each one of those has its expression in different ways. So energetic expression at the individual level is like heart mind coherence. At the psychic level, it's the unio mentalis, which is the union of opposites that we were talking about earlier. At the physical level, it's eat or be eaten. And with each expanding level, you get different ways in which those 3 aspects of our existence are expressed. So like at the cultural level, energetically, we see what happens in mass psychology. We see, what happens when an archetype takes over the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then the largest, the context for all of this is Jung's notion of the unus mundus. Sorry, it's misspelled there. It should be UNUS. Which is getting us into, the all of it.
Exactly. All right. Yeah, very cool. Let's see. And of course, here we have a little, for more context, it's, explain this one, both and, either or in one big ellipsis.
Yeah, go to the other one first.
Sure. Okay.
They're separate. So in the beginning, you remember when I was talking about being in college and, wave particle duality, and I started seeing the world in terms of both and. I kind of got on my high horse and was like, oh, both and is where it's at. But I was still, what I didn't realize was unconsciously I was still keeping both and separate from either or, and like judging one against the other. And it wasn't until I realized that, now you can put the other one back up, that either or is simply a subset of both and. That you need both of them. You need both either or and both and. because there are different situations. Like, you go to buy a car, and you choose between, the Honda and the Hyundai. You still need the either or.
Yeah.
And then the context for that whole thing is neither nor. So that's a part of like Indian logic that hasn't really trickled all the way into Western logic yet, which is the essentiality of neither nor as being like the ground for the possibility of both and either or.
Makes perfect sense indeed. Yeah, I
So,
think
this is the parts of language that also will need to be restructured in order to bring in this non-linear type of paradigm. We need to rethink about not just the words, not just the syntax, not just the subject verb object syntax. We need to think about logic. We need to think about our category structure. What's animal, vegetable, or mineral, what's sentient, what's non-sentient, what's alive, what's not alive, what's me, what's you, what's, like how do we categorize things? And some different cultures have different ways of categorizing the world around them already. Ours is kind of like this. Some indigenous languages are a lot more, like open, and the animals and the trees and the plants and the mountains have consciousness as well. And we say, oh, no, mountains aren't conscious. They're just, rocks.
yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you say that the language makes a difference. You're talking about like the Hopi tribe. There's no word, they don't say, let's say, light flashes. There's just the word light or flashing. Sorry.
Flashing.
That's it. Yeah, it's all united. And as we talked, I think over the phone, Owen Barfield, the great philosopher of language, friend of Tolkien, he actually studied that ancient men actually had a more diverse vocabulary than we do. And they saw reality in that non-linear, again, embedded, we are all at once the same thunder kind of language. And language sort of gave us the reality we see outside. So now it's time to go back or integrate.
Well, it's an ongoing progression. So just as our own consciousness differentiates from an undifferentiated state, going from magic to mythic to mental, language went from a more undifferentiated form to more, our very differentiated form now. And, it's not a bad thing. It's just, it's what happens. And we just seem to have gotten ourselves stuck in this mental consciousness structure that wants to keep everything very differentiated. Now, granted, we've got a big eco-psychology movement now that is going back to, or pushing forward, I guess one should say, to saying, how can we both keep the differentiation and integrate the non-differentiation? And that's one of the questions I have for language, and how can we do that? And one of the ways I think we need to do it is graphically. We need to use our pattern recognition capacities, not just our letter alphabetic forms of language. I think integrating other things like color, like Graham was talking about earlier, integrating color into language, and we can do it now because, you know, we have this technology, you know. We're not limited to
Right.
that anymore. So I'm hopeful. I'm hoping that there are other people out there who would be interested and excited to do this sort of thing. And to get back to the semiotics, I think using the structures of nature and of mathematics that are in nature, you know, like from the Platonic solids to the Fibonacci sequence to, you know, the golden mean, incorporating those into language, I think would be really rich.
For sure. And again, as we've talked on the show, and individuals like Jeff Kripal have written about, you wondered how again, going to the 20th century, how these giants, Niels Bohr, Oppenheimer, Einstein, all that, it was probably to get to the other side of this new reality called the quantum reality. They started doing things like embracing Jewish mysticism, Taoism, German idealism, esoteric Hinduism. You know, they had to go to these sort of liminal places where these individuals were using a different type of language and had a different consciousness so they could handle going on into the world. I mean, here's a quote you might like, which kind of opened my eyes, and that's Niels Bohr saying, no, you're not thinking, you're just being logical. I was like, that just blew me away, because he's on another level, and he's in a non-linear world of language right there, and that's how he solved and made the footprint that he have. And of course, there's this one attributed to Albert Einstein: we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So that right there says it. And I think Niels Bohr also said, the opposite of a profound truth can also be a profound truth. Could be a paradox. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
people on the internet don't want to see that, but it is. So I think that's it. I had one super chat I see there, and then we'll let Graham, if Graham has any last questions, or Lisa wants to say any last remarks. Benjamin Ochoa, thank you for the super chat. And he asked, would the Penrose triangle be a fourth dimensional thing? No idea what that is, Lisa, but maybe you do.
I think that's the thing that looks like it's flowing into, I'm not sure if it's fourth dimensional or if it's just like an optical illusion. Is that, I should probably just Google Penrose triangle. I'm thinking of MC Escher. You know, he had
that's the oubliette. We had Steven Snyder had a talk at our conference, and that was a very popular thing. Again, it's just stairways that lead to nowhere.
Yeah. Those are interesting ways to play with space and perspective in order to get beyond typical space and perspective.
Yeah, I think, again, like the koan, we're just trying to get out of that linear consciousness and bang into that those liminal places, as I like to say, those bardeaux where suddenly we can find that new language and see consciousness differently. And as Jung would say, listen to our soul. What did Jung say? One of my favorite quotes, he says, I'm not interested in neurosis. I want people to see the numinous. Again, the lightning, the thunder, the all at once. That became his goal more than anything later on in his career. Not, I'm going to solve your anxiety and your fear of whatever, or your mommy issues.
Right.
So this has been wonderful. Well, as we get to the end, Graham, do you have any last questions or remarks for Lisa?
Oh, it's been very enjoyable. I kind of wonder, how much he's explored some of the people that have been the influences of me. Like I said, on C.S. Peirce, especially like Nishida Kitaro, who did a great job incorporating like the concept of basho, which is very useful for perspective and things like that. And I'm coming from more of a science philosophical background. She's more art and psychology. So I'm just curious, which ones we share, because we clearly share Jung. Tag.
I'm going to have to look up Nishida Kitaro. Thank you for that. It
But
could
Graham isn't
show up in the next book.
yeah. I'm sure there's more to write. But isn't math just another language? It's a model we use to describe reality. I think Van says a lot. It's not, unless you're a Platonist, that's what it is, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to argue against Platonism.
2 plus
Yeah,
2, yeah, that's hard to argue against, right?
even if it did basically take, Russell and Wittgenstein, what was it, like 150 pages to prove that 1 plus 1 equals 2, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, but again, it's still a language. It's still a language
Yeah,
with some
no,
power.
I in a lot of ways I see it as the original primary language, just the language, as they say, math is the language that the universe is written in, that this, the laws of physics and science is written in. So we're simply several levels up from that one. So in a lot of ways, that's the original, most primitive language, and we're just trying to play catch up. Hey.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Or code, code makes up the universe, but a code needs a coder, a medium, and somebody the code receives it. So something's going on in the matrix. Awesome. Well, I hope, let's see, I've got here Lisa's book. Please get it. There's so much more in it that she brings in other philosophers and thinkers, embracing paradox, evolving language, expressing the unity and complexity of integral consciousness. And 2, also check out her novel, The One That Is Both. I have a feeling you use some of these ideas in this, right?
Yeah, I tried imagining the kind of world that one might live in if you embraced some of these ideas, especially at a time when Hollywood was giving us all of these, horrible apocalyptic movies that, like that's not the world I want to live into. we have to imagine the kind of world we want to live into in order for it to happen. I mean, look, somebody long time ago imagined, TV phones in the Jetsons, and here we are talking on our TV phone. Love it.
That is true. Very true. And we can imagine this better world. That is for sure. So we have to. And what advice do you have for people to find this new language? I think we talked about koans, thunder. What other visualization? What other tricks or ideas? You talk about going back to more image oriented thinking like our ancestors, more mythic kind of thinking. What else?
Image also meaning like engaging our pattern recognition side of the brain. I would definitely spend time meditating on MC Escher if people want to get into this in a really image-based way. I love his work.
Yeah, that's Rudolf Steiner always said in his schools, the Waldorfs, you don't teach a kid how to write to like 13 or 14, because if you start too early, it damages their image oriented part of their brain and they just aren't as intelligent. So I think there's something to it, right, Lisa?
Yeah. We've tended to favor the linguistic written language, linear thinking side of our processing capabilities. I mean, Ian McGilchrist goes into just some really great detail about that. Listen to his YouTube videos. He's wonderful.
Yeah, and he makes your book too.
And really emphasizes the need to get into the more, I mean, we call it right brain, but that's just shorthand for the holistic pattern recognizing capacity of our cognition.
Yeah, agreed. Well, keep doing what you're doing. It is very important work for the audience. Of course, I have it on the show notes, whether it's a video or audio version, but go to lisamaroski.com. Again, it's on the show notes, and definitely check out her book. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Interesting quotes in the comments. Please support the show. We got, yes, September, while you're going back to work and working on your Halloween costumes or fighting your neighbor about politics. We've got a lot of shows. We got shows on the Cathar, Philip K. Dick, The Shadow. We have a lot of Jung. I'm just keep rolling out the Jung because we need him more than ever. And for those of you who are already stressed out about, well, your pumpkin lattes, and you're probably stressed out about the election, but there's even a part in Lisa's book where she talks about politics or democracy, and you say there's finite games and infinite games, and politics is a infinite game. It's not, oh my God, this is the most important election of the world, and if we lose communism or fascism, it's like you show that it is. If you see politics as an infinite game with really no winner or losers, it really helps your sense of perspective. So I really like that section. So many good sections in your book, Lisa, but that will help you with the end of the world in November or whatever
Well, it's an infinite game with finite games embedded within it.
That
you just
is,
can't forget that the finite games are in order to keep the infinite game going.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, the politics since the founding fathers, there'll be politics 100 years from now.
Yeah.
It's an infinite game. So keep a sense of perspective. So, but yeah, we are at the end. Graham, thanks for keeping us company today.
Well, thank you too, Miguel. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and Graham, and I look forward to maybe doing this again when the next book comes out in another 10 years.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, it's a lot of research and bringing it together. I know you put your heart and soul into it, but good job. And again, this is important stuff. If we don't change it, well, we've already got all the quotes. If we don't change our consciousness and our language, we're going to be stuck where we are today. And people wonder why we're in a state of decay. And like you said, dystopias. We are in a state of dystopia, and it's time to we can turn it around. We can, just as Gaia can regenerate herself at the drop of a hat. So
yeah.
So awesome. Well, thank you very much for those of you attending, and for those of you who are watching on a recording. I hope you enjoy. Please support Aeon Byte. Great content coming in September. I can't do it without you, and I really appreciate you being on this journey of Gnosis. So everybody, take care, and until next time, and as I say, write your own gospel, live your own myth, and remember, the word for world is forest. Take care, everybody.